Welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast. Here is Monir El Azzouzi from easymedicaldevice.com. And today we'll talk about the Blue Guide. So it's a specific guide that is used not only for medical devices, but for CE mark product, but it can impact also medical devices. And I have with me Erik Vollebregt, our preferred lawyer, who will talk about that with us. So Erik, welcome to the Medical Device Made Easy podcast.
Hello, thanks for having me again.
Great. So Erik, you have studied a lot this Blue Guide. We saw a lot of posts. You have made also a blog that people can find again on the show notes. So maybe first to start this discussion, can we remind to people what is the Blue Guide and is it superior to the medical device regulation or is it at the same level? What is exactly the hierarchy of all those documents here?
Good question. Yeah, it's the Blue Guide is guidance. So that means that it's basically, it is supposed to help you interpret legislation pursuant to the European NLF framework, so the new legislative framework on goods. So it's basically, you could say, a one-size-fits-all piece of guidance that can help you understand the underlying principles that are common to all regulations and directives that regulate CE marked products, basically, to summarize it. So basically so that would apply to medical devices, to IVDs, but also to cable lifts, pressure vessels, pleasure craft,
toys, camera,
compatibility, toys, yeah, exactly, all that stuff. So, and that has the consequence that in the end, yeah, it's guidance. So guidance is something that you can never supersede legislation, but you can help it can help you to understand what the legislation might actually intend in a particular case. And also, I think it's an important point to start with, because in my work, I often deal with regulatory people that sort of see the Blue Guide as the gospel.
Yeah.
And they could be working at either notified bodies or manufacturers, but they tend to point to the Blue Guide as the Blue Guide says this, so therefore this is it. And that's really not the way it works. Basically, you should do it the other way around. You should look in the legislation, see if the legislation provides for a solution. And if it doesn't, then you can look at the Blue Guide, but also always keep in mind that the Blue Guide is one size fits all. So it may occur, for example, that that specific legislation for a specific product has a particular solution for a particular problem that is addressed in the Blue Guide. And if you then look at the Blue Guide alone, then you might think, okay, this is how it works, and then forget to look in the law. For example, a really specific thing is Article 6 in the MDR and the IVDR, the distance sale provision, which also has an article for providing a device as a service at a distance. It's a bit different in the MDR and the IVDR, because the MDR really aims at a situation where you basically are running software off of a server outside of the union and then provide it into the union as a service. Yeah. And the IVDR is really concerned with sending samples to a place outside of the union where they are tested on an assay that has never been placed on the market. So yeah, I mean, these are scenarios that are discussed in the Blue Guide, but the MDR and the IVDR have a specific rule for it, which then always will supersede what the Blue Guide says. So that's very important. And also, it's quite important, I think, to understand that the Blue Guide, it's a really big piece of text. It's about 175 pages of text. Which
same as MDR.
Yeah.
Same size.
It's a good point, almost same size as the MDR itself. So, but it also means that it's translated in 24 languages. And for European purposes, each of these languages has equal legal validity. So it can also happen that, for example, when you think like, hey, this is a weird position that the Blue Guide is taking in the language in which I am reading it, that's very helpful to also look at other languages of the Blue Guide. And if you speak only one language, then yeah, I think it's, well, maybe that could be a stimulus to also learn another, because it's something I've been ranting about a lot on my blog as well, the really weird difference between how placing on the market is described in the English version of the Blue Guide and some other language versions as well, like the Spanish, for example, compared to how it is described in the French and the German version and some other versions. So then you've got a Blue Guide that contradicts itself, and you can only find that out if you speak more than one language. So just speaking one language, there's absolutely no excuse for it, I think, and also makes you less effective as a regulatory professional, I would say. So
no, it's
more languages, people. It's really important.
Yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of people that relate to that, and that maybe had also this experience of reading into different language and see it's not saying exactly the same thing. But I think what is important and what you've said is first read the EUMDR or IVDR, and then if you need more precision, you can go to the Blue Guide, because it's true. I've done it myself. When we talk about, for example, placing on the market or making available or this kind of thing, when you go to the Blue Guide, it gives you more detail or some examples or what is not placing on market or what is not making available, etc. So which can help you a lot also. The first version of the Blue Guide, if I remember, was 2016.
Can I make one more remark there? Because especially if you're talking about guidance on the new legislative framework of products, the Blue Guide is not the only guidance out there. Also very important, because for the specific directives and the specific regulations, is also a lot of additional guidance that also discusses concepts that are discussed in the Blue Guide. So let's say, for example, there is a fantastic piece of guidance about the machinery directive.
Yeah.
Let's say I'm working with the MDR. I have a big medical device that is also in scope of the machinery directive. Then the medical devices directive says, okay, MDR applies, except for the additional hazards that the MDR does not cover, but the machinery directive does cover. So then you also have to look at the machinery directive. Means that you don't only look at NDCG guidance, but also at machinery directive guidance, perhaps. Both are covered by the Blue Guide. And then, then it gets quite complicated very quickly. So you may be in a situation where you'll have to look at multiple pieces of guidance as well, which in turn also might be inconsistent with each other or contradict each other.
Yeah, this is the beauty, if I can say, of legislation. When they are not talking really the same language or using a bit of different things, then it's a nightmare for the one that is using that, or also for the authorities or for the notified bodies that are interpreting in one way and you in another way. So it's like, making it really difficult. We have now the we have the previous version. I think it was 2016, if I remember. The new one, 2022. So we have some changes that were appearing on the Blue Guide now. So are those changes really like completely changing the game for medical device manufacturers, or it's just slight updates or slight precision of that?
In some cases, I would say big changes, but that's regarding geographic scope, right? So that's Brexit. We don't have the UK anymore as a union member state. So, but we still have Northern Ireland, in which union new legislative framework legislation applies. So a lot of people don't know that, but the UK has a pretty fascinating constitution. So at the moment, for example, in Great Britain, which is basically the UK minus Northern Ireland, this is where European law doesn't apply anymore. But Northern Ireland is a place where union law still applies. So the MDR and the IVDR still apply in Northern Ireland, which leads to a really crazy situation in a sense, but this was the solution taken upon Brexit to make sure that the Irish would not start fighting again with each other again within Northern Ireland. And a lot of people often don't understand the solution, but this is basically the political thing about it. And the Brits were on board with that at the time when it was negotiated, but now they want to get rid of it because, of course, it's also not super convenient to be partially in the union and mostly out of the union. So these are things that if you don't understand the news on these particular issues, it actually helps to read the Blue Guide because it explains this kind of stuff in a lot of detail. Same thing with Switzerland.
Yeah.
And
it was surprising because Switzerland, I was thinking to see clearly what's happening in Switzerland, etc., but it was not so clear, if I can say.
Blue Guide, no, that's where you see that the Blue Guide is a one-size-fits-all document. So that means that they did not probably the Commission thought it was a bit politically sensitive to discover how everything with the MRAs for medical devices and IVDs went down, because that was actually pretty interesting. It's the Commission has tried to negotiate and even offer the Swiss a kind of additional transitional regime on the MRA expiring, but the Swiss didn't want it. So then basically they said, okay, well, then we continue to push you out of the internal market, one expiring MRA at a time. But that's, of course, politically kind of controversial, so they will never put that in the Blue Guide, but that's what happened for medical devices.
Yeah.
And other products as well, because mutual recognition of stock trading expired some time ago. Other MRAs are also up. So until the Swiss say, well, we want to revisit the comprehensive package that they actually negotiated over 2014 to 2019, the EU is going to say, okay, well, then have it your way. If you don't want to be part of the internal market, and you're not part of the internal market, and we will push you out one MRA at a time.
Yeah, so we'll see if I can say how it is going, but there is no, I didn't hear any official conclusion of this, if I can say, from on the negotiation between the European Union and Switzerland. And because we have a lot of questions from people, because at the beginning we were saying, oh, they are negotiating, so maybe soon they will sign the MRA, and then we'll stop this thing about importer and authorized representative in Switzerland and importer and authorized representative in Europe for Swiss market. But apparently it's not maybe going to be negotiated at all.
Yeah, I don't know. What I see in the Swiss news is that there is outrage about the situation with medical devices, which I understand, because it's not a nice situation for Switzerland as a small country to be in. But on the other hand, what I don't see is a political push to say, well, maybe we should just think a bit more about how we relate to the European Union, because the European Union has said, look, the internal market is not a smorgasbord where you can pick the things that you like and sort of leave the things that you don't like. Either you're in all the way or you're out all the way. So we need to decide what we want as Switzerland. Do we want to be out all the way, or do we want to be in all the way? Or do we want to be continuously on the fence, being pushed out one mutual recognition agreement at the time, which is also, that's basically where they are. Yeah. I think that the politicians are, one way or the other, they don't feel comfortable telling the population these options are on the table. Because I think actually that under the current Swiss political climate, it might well be if they put this to the population and say, do you want to be in or out of Europe, then or the European internal market, they will probably say out.
I agree. So it's dangerous. It's like the Brexit that happened in the UK, but for Swiss. So
the problem is that there are never good arguments that are used, because it's a populist game. I mean, because economists can do the math here and say, look, there is an enormous net benefit of being part of the union. That's true for the UK. It's true for Switzerland. But then again, I mean, this is politics and not exact science. And yeah, I mean, for politics, you don't need a diploma, and for voting, you don't need a diploma either. So it's basically just
exactly. So in terms of the Blue Guide, so the other changes, we have some chapters that were increased, some chapters that were where there is included some elements. So first, that what I have noted, so I noted a few of the chapters. So the first one is the software. So initially we had just one sentence about software. Now it's like a big chapter, which says that software is really a major thing now within our countries, etc. So
it is? Oh, I never noticed.
What is that? Sorry?
I never noticed software is important. No, sorry.
No, it's what is said. It's what is said on the thing. So I was like,
that's why I read this and I was like, oh, European Commission, is that true? Is software suddenly very important? Or
yeah, it's why the first sentence is like that. So software is really important, etc. I say what? Well, okay, great. So, but is there any new thing there, or it's?
No, because I mean, under the MDR and the IVDR, we're doing really sophisticated things already with software. So yeah, no, there's basically there's nothing new there. The only interesting thing I think about the software paragraph is where they link changes to software updates, also software patches, to maintenance and repair. So basically they're making a little bridge where they say the principles that apply to hardware maintenance and repair also apply to software maintenance and repair. So boomers like me can still understand it.
Yeah, exactly. So there is now also a chapter on repair and maintenance. So what is mainly the difference here also on this one?
Yeah, that's also something that was already addressed in the old Blue Guides, but I think the new part is that they added quite a lot of language on responsibility of third-party repair companies, and also the responsibility of the user itself when the user either themselves repair a product or have it repaired externally. And the Blue Guide puts a lot of emphasis on the responsibility of the third parties and of the user to also make sure that the repaired product remains within CE mark specifications, which is, of course, completely and utterly logical, I would say, because I mean, the logic of the Blue Guide is that as soon as a product is placed on the market, it's not the manufacturer's responsibility anymore, except for recalls for things that happened in production, basically, right?
Yeah.
So so that means that if you have third parties that start to modify the devices, then they should also be responsible for it. And let's say, for example, again, you have a sophisticated piece of capital equipment in a hospital, which hospitals really like to tweak, and they like to put it on wheels, and they like to do all kinds of stuff with it. Or they are going to have it refurbished, or they are going to have it updated, or they're going to have it maintained by third parties. Yeah, I mean, then of course it's a bit like your car. If you take it to the garage, you would really like that the garage takes responsibility for restoring the car to its type-approved specifications.
Exactly.
Unless you ask for a specific modification, like for example, can you do me a mod on the electronic limitations on the engine, for example? And if that happens, logically, the manufacturer says, I'm not taking responsibility for that. It's
not my fault anymore if something happened there.
Exact same thing with medical devices. And that's what the Blue Guide basically explains. So what I see in practice is that third-party repair companies and also end users, hospitals mainly, can be quite opportunistic in the way they deal with these things. Then, for example, they have the products repaired or maintained by a third-party service provider that is not properly qualified, for example. And then, and then they will just blame it on the manufacturer, for example. So that's not really nice. And that's reiterated in the Blue Guide that, that you have to take responsibility for that if that's what you want to do. Exactly. Of course, what you see in the MDR is there are provisions in the MDR that deal with this as well. And also, because third-party service providers will, of course, say, yeah, but these stupid manufacturers never release specifications and how to repair these things. There's actually quite a lot of additional language in the MDR and the IVDR that also requires manufacturers to be more specific on things like this. So that's also interesting for these third parties to look at, rather than complain that manufacturers never cooperate with these things. Because I can understand if a device, piece of capital equipment in a hospital fails and kills a patient, it's not the name of the repair company that's in the news. It's the name of the manufacturer. So. Exactly. Understandably, these guys are careful with this kind of stuff. And of course, they are companies, so they can be cheeky. And it might not always be rational to refuse third parties, but that's what you have competition law, for example, for. If you feel that you are being kept out of a downstream repair market without good reasons, then you could then competition law is an instrument that you would have.
Exactly. And what is also important with the repair and maintenance is also one chapter that is on the Blue Guide, which is second-hand products that can be also sold. Is this also something new to the Blue Guide, or it's something that was already existing before?
Well, those second-hand products are interesting in the sense that the MDR and the IVDR specifically declare that they don't apply to second-hand sales. Right, that's in both of them. In recital 3, it says we don't apply to second-hand sales, which is interesting because it basically means that let's say I am a specialized company and I'm going to buy decommissioned medical devices from a hospital, and then subsequently I'm going to sell them again. I would not be a distributor in the meaning of the MDR. Because it says I don't apply to second-hand sales. Yeah, and this is where the novelty in the Blue Guide comes up. The Blue Guide says, well, in that case, you are still a distributor in the meaning of the General Product Safety Directive.
Okay.
The General Product Safety Directive is a kind of catch-all piece of legislation that says if you sell products, they have to be safe. You have to have some kind of traceability. You have to be able to do some kind of recall, but it's not as sophisticated and as detailed as the MDR is. Exactly. But it does mean that, for example, for second-hand products, you do have to check that the product that you're going to put on the second-hand market is safe. So it means that you need to do at least kind of risk management process on the device that you get in. So you cannot just get it from a hospital or a care home as is and then just resell it. That would be pretty irresponsible. Also, because these devices, actually most of the devices that are resold are electronic devices that run software. Usually they are completely stacked to the roof with years and years of patient treatment sessions. Yeah. Because hospitals don't always follow procedures for wiping the personal data of these devices good enough. So that actually, that's also one of the things you must do, because otherwise it's a data breach for the hospital even. So you can also help the hospital by having your own acceptance procedure where you will say, well, we will not accept a device from a hospital if the hospital does not certify to us that they have taken all the personal data off, for example.
So it's something that maybe for people, if you listen to the previous podcast that we had on discontinuation, we talk about this kind of thing for medical device manufacturers, but it can also apply to hospitals to how to decommission or how to discontinue products and then to erase all the data or archive all the data, etc. So it can be, I think, something interesting also. Mm-hmm. So for the second hand, it's fine. I had also some changes now on placing on the market, and I think we have a lot of discussion on this one. There is also marked inside now some new wording like renting, leasing, etc. So what is the difference here?
Yeah, I think that substantively on placing on the market, nothing really changed. I'm just scrolling upwards in my comparison document as well, just to make sure that I'm not overlooking anything. But my analysis was that on the substance, it is basically, it's still exactly the same. It would also be weird if they would actually change a lot all of a sudden, because then you would normally need a legislative change for that. But for example, renting, leasing is already was already in scope of the old Blue Guide. Renting is basically just another form of making a product available. So the only what they do is that there's just some minor tweaks in clarification. For example, that they say placing on the union can happen only once for each individual product across the EU. That was also in the 2016 Blue Guide in another place, in the part about imported and exported goods.
Okay.
So for me there was nothing new, except of course that really, as we say in Dutch, my wooden shoe broke, because I was totally amazed that they didn't fix this language inconsistently.
Yeah, we talked about that also in the previous podcast about some languages difference or some, and you had also a blog on this one. So apparently they didn't listen to your to read your blog or listen to the podcast. So otherwise they will have maybe fixed this kind of issue.
Then the commission did send me an email saying, you are right, this is an inconsistency, we should probably fix it. So I don't know why this didn't happen.
Yeah, so let's see the next version 2000 and to 2050, maybe they will be fixing the next version. The last one is about declaration of conformity. We had here also something about declaration of conformity when there is a transition between two legislation and this kind of thing. So can you tell us more about that?
Yeah, what they did was they put in a new paragraph that is called Transitional Arrangements for the EU Declaration of Conformity, where they basically explain how you can work with a, let's say, a sort of overlapping declaration of conformity that covers both the device under old legislation as under new legislation. So for
example, MDR, MDD and MDR.
Theoretically, you could, for example, say, let's say I have the exact same device, which is currently on the market as a legacy device, but I also have another color of the device, for example, or I have a slightly newer version of the device that I'm going to place on the market under an MDD certificate, or actually for whatever reason in my my manufacturer mind, I'm going to place an identical device on the market as a legacy device because I already have them in stock, they are labeled a certain way, whatever, and I am also starting my production on MDR devices, which of course may have some label changes, right? So then Section 211 says you could write a declaration that covers both, which is interesting because it is guidance, but not law. Yeah. So we still don't know how this would actually work out under the MDR or the IVDR. But this is what I found a really interesting thing, of which I thought like, okay, I don't really know what they want with this and how it would play out in a weird situation like legacy devices and regulation devices under the MDR and the IVDR. But this is something that people could definitely look into and see if this is something that could work for them. Because, yeah, I mean, the way I look at it is it's theoretically it could work, except that there's no legal basis for it in the MDR or the IVDR.
Exactly. So if we execute that in our declaration of conformity, do you think notified bodies will have something to say about it?
Yeah, of course, because they've never seen that before. So you will
so don't do it.
For sure, you will get some interesting actions. If you want a nice discussion with your notified body, I think you should definitely do something like this.
Okay.
If you want to have smooth sailing, then I would just say separate the hell out of those two declarations of conformity as much as you can. Yeah.
Okay. I think message reserved. I don't want any problem with notified bodies. So let's go on our old route, which was great. And then we are fine there. Great. So in terms of things, so as I've said, you have a blog post now where you talk about those elements. I think it's on chapter 2 of this. So is there anything else there that maybe we didn't talk about?
Yeah, I also wrote an introductory post, which was basically my first impression on the Blue Guide. That was before this one. So I've done 2 now on the new Blue Guide. One was the general impression, which also contains a table with a general overview of what is new in each chapter.
Yeah.
And then I started to go down the list of chapters. So I also wrote one on chapter 2, which is basically what we discussed in this podcast. And now I'm writing another article on chapter 3, which is about economic operators. So then I'm going to look into more detail what changes for specific economic operators, and also, of course, which new economic operators have been invented in the new Blue Guide, because they invent one new economic operator, except that this is not relevant for the MDR and the IVDR, being the economic operator mentioned in Article 4 of the Market Surveillance Regulation, very relevant for a lot of other product categories, so like for general electronics.
Okay.
Irrelevant for medical devices and IVDs, because these are not explicitly included in the list in Article 4, Section 5 of the Market Surveillance Regulation that determines to which products this applies. So this is another example of, if you would read the Blue Guide just like that, you would be like, oh no, I need an economic operator in the meaning of Article 4 of the Market Surveillance Regulation. And if you read the Market Surveillance Regulation and look at the MDR and the IVDR, it's not necessary. So never look at the Blue Guide in isolation. And never put it in just one language.
Yeah, start with the legislation first, and if you need more precision, go to the Blue Guide. So I will put the links to the blog posts on the show notes. Don't hesitate to go and also subscribe to Erik Vollebregt's page newsletter, because I think each time there is a new thing. Also, Erik is making a lot of, you are really, I think, having a lot of fun writing all those things, because I see all the small videos that you are making or pictures or thing, and it's really refreshing to have that. So don't hesitate, go and subscribe to the blog of Erik. And Erik, you have your book release edition 2 that will be released. I mean, it's soon. It's a teaser. So when will this happen?
Yeah, so this week, actually, the designer completed the work on the book. So now the book is basically finished, and it's now at the proofreaders. So there's a group of people that have very generously agreed to spend some time looking at whether Erik made any really stupid mistakes. And so that will take a few weeks. And after that, I will take some time to process any comments that come out of it. So I expect the book to be available by the end of September, more or less. So if you're still thinking about buying one, don't buy one at the moment. Wait for a month or so, and then you can buy the second edition. And the second edition, I think, is really worth buying, because the first edition was accurate until beginning of April last year. Well, a lot has happened since. And also I've added about 240 additional pages of substantive comments. So so it's now a book of almost 1,400 pages. The old one was 1,150 and a bit. And all the additional text is basically commentary because the law didn't become any longer. But what Erik has to say about it was that did expand a bit. Yeah.
No,
and also the IVDR part has really been expanded a lot. So for the IVD people, it's also definitely interesting.
Exactly. As I said, it will be the Bible, if I can say, for the regulators. So don't hesitate. Wait until September, and then you can get this second edition. And I will put the link anyway, I will share the link as soon as it will be available so that people can get that. And if you want to follow Erik, so you can also go to LinkedIn and you can follow him directly because he's posting, I think you are posting a lot of information also information that other people are writing and releasing. So I'm sure there will be a lot of interesting information that people can get by following you also.
Yeah, and also answer a lot of questions on fora. So I'm
exactly. Great. So Erik, thank you very much. I think it was really helpful for the Blue Guide. I'm sure there will be a lot of other topics that we will discuss in the next podcast. But I hope that people now understand what is the changes on the new Blue Guide, and follow you also on your blog for any of the new chapters that you will analyze and provide them information. But don't hesitate to go on the show notes to get all the information, all the details about that. So Erik, thank you very much, and I wish you a nice day.
You too. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.